In this video, you'll learn about functions and how they reduce the amount of code we need to write and maintain. When developing a program, there will be times when the code becomes complex. You may find yourself writing the same chunks of code over and over, only changing a few variables along the way. Programming languages, including Lua, provide a system that lets you break up your code into smaller, reusable chunks called functions. In object-oriented programming, functions are sometimes referred to as methods. There is a standard programming principle called DRY, or don't repeat yourself. If you find yourself writing the same code over and over, you should consider writing functions instead. Functions are essentially self-contained chunks of code. They can accept values, often referred to as parameters, perform operations on those values, and then return new values based on the code that called the function. Let's look at a simple function. This chunk of Lua code creates a function named makeFullName, which will take two names and put them together with a space in between. Since we want this function to work for any name combination, we'll need to pass in values to the function as parameters. In Lua, parameters do not have a specific type, so you'll need to make sure that they are what the function expects them to be. Notice how we simply pass the parameters to the function separated by commas. Using these parameters, the function then creates the name variable. Notice that this variable has been declared as a local variable, meaning it only exists within this function. Outside of the function, you cannot access that variable because it only resides within the scope of the function. If you missed the scope video lesson, be sure to watch it, as scope is an important aspect of all programming languages. To make the function useful, it needs to return the full name. This is where the return statement comes in handy. Let's look at the code now. The function will return the value of name back to the code which called the function. Here's an example. Local full name equals make full name, and we pass in Albert and Einstein as parameters. The parameters can be variables too. Local first name equals Albert, local last name equals Einstein, local full name equals make full name, and then we pass in first name and last name parameters. The parameter variable names do not have to match the names used in the function declaration and frequently will not. Conveniently, Lua allows something that most languages don't. That's the return of multiple values instead of just one. Let's look at another example. We can call the function like this, expecting both values to be returned. Lua allows you to declare functions in two different ways: the method you've already learned and a method where you create a variable and then assign a function to it. Each method serves a slightly different purpose in regards to scope and abilities. Sometimes you'll need to call the function before actually declaring it. This method lets you declare the function name first, call the function, and provide its code afterwards. Another use of this declaration method is to create objects that have methods. Now you can call the function like this. A limitation of this approach is that if a function is declared and assigned a variable, it cannot call itself. This is known as recursion. A recursive function continues to call itself until a situation is met. A classic example of this is a Fibonacci sequence calculation where a number is the sum of the previous two numbers. So, if I have the series 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, and 21, 21 is the result of 8 plus 13. The calculation of a Fibonacci sequence is greatly simplified by using recursion. While it's not a common situation, you should be aware that only functions declared in this fashion can be used in recursion. Sometimes you might want to check the passed in parameters to make sure they're what you expect, and if they're not, notify the calling program that there was an error. You can use the Lua type function for this purpose. In this way, you've confirmed that money amount is a number. If it's not, you'll return nil for the two expected values and return a third error string. This will set dollars and cents to nil and error string to the error message. Then you could process the result as follows. And that's a look at how to work with functions in Lua and Corona SDK. Learn more about functions in Dr. Brian Burton's book, Learning Mobile Applications and Game Development with Corona SDK, Available from www.burtonsmediagroup.com/books.